Hi. Two things before we start. Firstly, this story contains some potentially triggering events and deals with traumatic experiences, but I urge you, it is worth hearing. And secondly, if you're new to the podcast, in a few seconds, a man is about to shout in your ears very loudly. Don't worry, he's gone quite quickly, and if you want, you can skip him. It's thought that the older we get, the braver we get. Is this true? It's thought that the younger we are, the more vulnerable we are. Is that true? Probably in part both of these things are in some way right, but what about having an experience, regardless of your age, where you have to show your strength, something that really tests your mettle? Does your age matter then? Does it make you weaker or make you stronger? What happens when you are face to face with danger, so close that you can feel it breathing on you? Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. So, how's it going in your life? What are you up to right now? I love to hear the weird and the wonderful places that listen. Honestly, because you get in touch sometimes and you'll be like, I was listening to you while I was mountain climbing, or I was listening to you as I was brushing out the stables. And I love to hear, I tell you what I'm going to do. One day I'm going to do a long list of the weird places that people listen to the podcast from. So if you're, currently milking a cow while you're listening, let me know. If you're doing a bit of taxidermy, get in touch. So if you're a new listener, and there are a lot of new listeners to the podcast, then hello. And welcome along. Welcome along for the crazy ride. If you're an old listener, if you're an old timer, thank you for continuing to give me your ears. Okay, the short story this week. It's a story of strength, a bravery. Because I love these stories and I get so many requests to tell those stories. Okay, before we get there, let me do a couple of very quick shout outs and then we'll get on. Hello to Khaled on Twitter, who says, I have no idea how you fucking find the amazing stories week in, week out. Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. That was nice of you. Stephanie Lindsay on Facebook. Hello, Stephanie. Thanks for being a big fan of the podcast and for getting in touch to tell me that. New Patreon supporters. Hello. It means a lot to me, so thank you so much for your support. And finally, to the girls in the Acon Labs in San Diego who listen to the show. So that's Michelle, Jen, and Deirdre. The three of you. I imagine you like a sort of superpowered girl band, just the three of you there in the Acon Labs. So hello to all of you. Okay, are we ready for a story? Okay, let's go. Alright, let's go to Indiana in the USA. And it's 2017. Sydney is a 15-year-old girl, and she lives with her parents in a place called Gary, Indiana. I don't know it. I've never been. I'd like to go, but I don't know it. Now, they live in quite a quiet suburb in Gary, and Sydney goes to the local high school. Sydney's mum and dad are both professionals, and Sydney is an only child. Now, Sydney, here's the thing. Like lots of 15-year-olds, she has many, many hobbies, many things to occupy her time. So she's got her friends, she's part of lots of different groups, lots of different activities in the week to keep her busy on top of school. But one of these, and really her main passion, is for theatre. Her love of drama. She wants to be an actress, darling. And so she's part of our high school drama department. Now, on the evening that we're going to go to in this story, Sydney is performing in a play at school, which both of her parents have come to watch. Annoyingly, and I hate this because I love to know the details, I don't know what the play was that she was performing that night. I'm going to guess high school play could have been a Shakespeare, but that's just a guess. Anyway, whatever the play was isn't really relevant to the event that's going to happen, but I just can't tell you exactly what she was performing in. So the play finishes at her school. Sydney's mum and dad, they congratulate their daughter on her performance. And at this point, right, her parents decide they're going to go out and they're going to have dinner. But they're going to do that just the two of them. And that they're going to drop Sydney at home. So the parents go off. They find, a restaurant. They're going to have some food. They're going to have a drink. But first of all, what they do is they drive by the house and they drop Sydney home. Now, like I said earlier on, Sydney was an only child, so she's home alone. So they say to her, look, we're just going to go have some food, spend a bit of time, and we'll be back in a couple of hours. So, Sydney is home alone. When she gets in, the first thing she does is she's starving. She's really hungry. So she makes herself a quick snack, and then she heads up to her bedroom. She's really tired from whichever play it was that she was performing that day. She's got that sort of post-performance exhaustion thing. So she sort of jumps into bed, and it's really only 9 o'clock at night. But being so tired, she falls asleep pretty quickly in her bed. Now, Sydney, do you know what? I'm going to stop for a second and I'm going to tell you this. So she's called Sydney, obviously, this central character. Sydney's not a very common name, really, in the UK. You don't really get an awful lot of girls called Sydney. You don't really get a lot of guys called Sydney unless they're maybe in their 60s or 70s. So I think it must be much more of an American thing. Maybe it's an Australian thing. Maybe other parts of the world, yeah. But as I was researching this story and I'm going through it and I'm making notes and I'm like, Sydney gets home and Sydney does this and Sydney whatever, suddenly I started to think to myself, do you know what? I know that I know a Sydney, a female Sydney. I know that I know one. So sometimes you hear a name and you start to rack your brains and you're like, where in my life would I have met a female called Sydney? And then as I'm saying it, this picture of a dark-haired girl starts to come into my brain. And I'm like, I can see her in my brain. Anyway, I just kind of kept making my notes, kept going through, la 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 la. As I started to get further down, I was like, oh my God, I've now got another memory. She's on the phone. I can see this girl, Sydney, that I think I know. She's on the phone. Do you know what I was thinking of? Bloody Neve Campbell in, do you remember the Scream films from the 1990s? He was called Sydney. And the guy phones the house and he's like, hello, Sydney. I'm inside the house, or whatever it is that he says. I was like, so bizarre. For a moment, I actually thought I was friends with Neve Campbell from the Scream movies because she was called Sydney. I was like, that's so strange. I literally just invented her as my friend. She was not my friend. I've now gone so crazy, I'm now making up celebrity pals. Great. So, after about an hour or so of being asleep, suddenly Sydney wakes up, and she wakes up in a panic. Now you know that feeling. We're all going to have had that feeling, that moment when you wake up. It's horrible. It's a horrible moment when your body just suddenly, boo, wakes up. I sometimes get that bang, wide awake. It's 3 in the morning. I'm awake, but I'm like wide awake. I'm wide awake and I'm alert. You know the feeling? I mean, anyway, you didn't come to this podcast to hear about how I sleep, but that's what's happened to Sydney. So Sydney's awake and she has the feeling, she has the sense, something isn't right. She hasn't been asleep long, but she's so tired that she went into a deep sleep. And now she's out of it. So sure of her feeling that something isn't right, pure survival mode kicks in here. And before she's even sure that she might be wrong, what Sydney does is she grabs her phone and she decides that she needs to find a place in the house to hide. Not sure yet why, she just knows she needs to hide. And she decides quickly that under her bed is the right place to do that. So with her phone in her hand, she jumps out of bed, she gets underneath the bed, and she tries to call her mum, but it goes to voicemail. So she tries again. Same thing. Voicemail. By now she is pretty freaked out by the feeling. And she's starting to wonder, actually, is this my mind just playing tricks on me? Or was I in some sort of nightmare? Is that what this was? Because as yet, nothing's actually happened. But that's about to change. As she lies under the bed, she's listening carefully to the house, which is completely silent. And then she hears footsteps outside of her bedroom door. Now she hasn't heard the front door open, so she's sure that this can't be her parents. And also, Sydney's parents would have come into the house and they would have called out to her, and that hadn't happened. So as terrifying as it is, in her heart, Sydney knows someone is in the house, and she is lying as still as she possibly can under the bed. Her bedroom door opens and the light is switched on. From under the bed, she sees the feet of a man enter her bedroom. She doesn't recognise his shoes, and she now knows that a stranger is in her bedroom. But she's hidden out of sight. She's under the bed, and she hears him. He is opening drawers, he's opening the wardrobe, he's throwing everything about. He's looking for something, he's looking for stuff. But she just lays there, curled up, completely and utterly still, hidden out of sight, thinking it's going to be okay because he's going to keep looking. Whatever he's looking for, he's not going to find. He's going to leave and I'll be okay. And then the footsteps, they come closer to the bed. They stop. Sydney holds her breath. And the man who has entered her bedroom gets down on the floor and he looks under the bed. And he looks right into Sydney's eyes. Fucking hell. Oh, scary. Scary stuff. Before she knows what's happening, the man is dragging Sydney out from under the bed by her hair. And now she's lying on the bedroom floor with the stranger who's entered the house standing above her. Can you imagine how terrified that 15-year-old must have been in that moment? She must have just been so panicked. So she's screaming and she's screaming and she's screaming. So he grabs her again by the hair. Now this time he drags her out of the bedroom and into the hallway outside of her bedroom. So she's lying on the floor of the hallway. And all that she can think about is, I just need to find a way that I can get up. And if I can just get to the staircase, I can run downstairs and I can get to the front door. And I can get out and I can get to safety. So she's focused on this. She's thinking, okay, he's going to let me go for a second. And I'm going to be fast. I'm going to move as fucking fast as I'm going to move like the wind, or whatever the phrase is. I'm going to move as fast as I possibly can. Move like the wind. Move like the sea. Move like the something. But here's the problem. Here's the huge, huge problem with that plan. The man who has dragged her from the bedroom shouts downstairs the following 6 words. Get something to cover her head. He shouts this to someone else, who replies with the words, okay. So she now knows there are 2 men in the house. Before she knows what's actually happening, there is a bag placed over Sydney's head, and then, even more terrifyingly, there is a gun placed to the back of her skull. And they're shouting at her. Both men are shouting at her to give them money. Now, Sydney is trying to explain to them at this point, she doesn't have money. She's 15, she doesn't have any money. Her parents do, but she doesn't know where in the house that is. And they're screaming at her, just give us anything. Just give us jewellery. Whatever. And she keeps repeating, I'm only 15. I don't have anything that I can give you. What happens next is just horrible. And if I could take these 2 fuck brains and smash their heads together, I would. One of the men says to the other, get me something to tie her up with. So one of the guys rushes away to find something, and he returns with tape. He wraps the tape around her wrists until her hands are tied together. They then put the tape around Sydney's face, like actually wrap it around her whole entire face. And all the while she's still lying on the hallway. And then one of these bastards rapes her. For fuck's sake, she is 15 years old. And at this point they know she's saying to them, I'm 15. And it doesn't fucking stop them. Now, I'm recording in a hotel room tonight. Otherwise, I would scream the police down about how much I would like to smash those guys in the face right now. But I can't do that because I'm in a hotel room, and they might call the police, and I might get arrested for being a mentalist, or they might think that I've murdered someone, or someone's being murdered in the room. So instead, what will I do? I'll do a noise that shows how angry this moment makes me, instead of a scream. Oh no, that was rubbish. That's the noise my dog makes when he sees a fox in the garden. Scrap that. I'll just have to quietly, internally digest my anger. Okay, once the assault is finished on Sydney, she's lying there. The men are continuing to stand over her, shouting at her, "Tell us where the money is." And Sydney says that all she can think at that moment is, I'm going to be found here naked. I'm going to be found here naked and dead. And this next bit breaks my heart. She says at that point she thought, I've never even had a boyfriend. And I'm not even going to make it to my 16th birthday. Fuck it. Now all these guys are pacing up and down the hallway, still waving guns. Sydney comes up with a plan. Clever Sydney. She says in this moment, she's motioning to get the tape off of her face because she's got something to say. So she's urgently pointing at her face. So the guy rips a little bit so that she can speak. And she says, I've remembered. I've remembered where there's some money. And it's in my room. Now as soon as she says this, one of the guys moves towards her bedroom, and Sydney starts to wrestle with the tape on her wrists, and using sheer will and strength, she gets the tape off of her wrists, and now she can now pull the rest of it off of her face. Now he's far enough away that she turns to go. She gets up and she runs for the stairs, and she thinks, this is it. This is my bid for freedom. I can get down the stairs, I can get out the front door. What she doesn't know is that the second man is standing at the bottom of the stairs, and he's pointing the gun at her. And as she tries to run, he fires the gun at Sydney. In absolute panic, in complete terror, she runs into her parents' bedroom, where there is a balcony. She makes her way to the balcony and she looks down. She doesn't have long to think here. Now she's 2 stories high, but right now the only chance of survival is jumping. And if she jumps, yes, there is the danger that she may damage herself in a completely irreversible way. But it's also really her only chance to survive at the moment. If she jumps, she will end up on the street below, where she can run to some other houses. This part is insane. This is kind of weird, and I sort of laughed at this moment when I got to it in the story, but I laughed in a good way. Sydney's adrenaline was pumping so hard. Her body had gone into such a panicked mode that she wasn't aware that when the man fired the gun from the bottom of the stairs, he'd actually shot her in the knee. There was a bullet in her leg. Now, I know that sounds insane, and it took me a minute, because I was like, she's been shot, but she doesn't know she's been shot. But not in that moment, she didn't. She had no idea. I mean, I think I've read somewhere the same thing that about stabbing. I'm pretty sure that you can be stabbed and it can take up to 30 seconds to a minute for your body to actually understand that it's been stabbed. I know that sounds really strange, but there's a science, there's a medical thing here. I mean, my name's not Dr. Henderson. I don't have a medical degree, but I'm telling you that there's a truth in there somewhere. Anyway, she's standing on the balcony, she's looking down, she realises she doesn't really have time to think about this. So what's Sydney going to do? Well, she jumps. She jumps and she crashes to the street below, and she gets up instantly and she starts to run towards the nearest house. And she's thinking, okay, fine, I can get to safety, I can get to freedom. As she's running, she hears footsteps behind her, And of course, who is it? It's the two fuck brains from inside the house. They're only a few feet away from Sydney. They're catching up fast on her. Now she's nearing some houses where she could get to safety, but not before they tackle Sydney on to the ground. And so she's lying on the street. The one who raped her in the house, he grabs her by the throat. He puts his hand around her throat and he shouts to the man with the gun, "Let's drag her into the alley." Sydney does the one thing, the only one thing that she can do in this moment, and that is she starts screaming for help. She starts screaming loudly enough to wake up the whole neighbourhood. And the guys are trying to drag her into the alley and she's shouting for help. Now a house nearby turns its light on and a woman Sydney knows appears at the door and starts yelling, What the hell is going on out here?" And she recognises Sydney's voice and she's shouting, "Sydney, is that you?" And at that, the two men drop her, they let her go, and they make a run for it. They're gone. The neighbour comes over, picks Sydney up, and brings her into her house. Now this whole experience has lasted 45 minutes, and this 15-year-old has held her nerve the whole time. But it's as the neighbour calls 911 that for the first time in that evening, Sydney bursts into tears at the sheer shock of what has just happened to her. And she's wondering why can't she walk properly. And when the ambulance arrives, they tell her, "You've been shot in the leg." And she absolutely can't believe it. Sydney's told by a doctor that the jump she took from the bedroom window onto the street was nothing short of a miracle that she can walk, because had she landed differently, she at 15 years old could have entirely lost her knee and her lower leg. So actually probably going back, not knowing she'd been shot was probably the best thing that could have happened. Sydney's parents arrive home and they immediately make their way to the hospital. I'm delighted to say Sydney is a few years older now. She's had surgery done on her leg and she's made a full recovery. She's in therapy and she's a really well adjusted girl, still looking to pursue a career in acting. What I'm not so happy to say is this: the two bastards that did this were never caught. When they left Sydney lying in the street, they disappeared into the night, and for all they knew, they were leaving her for dead, and they were never caught by police. And so ends the story. Well, there you go. That was Sydney. 15. How horrible. I mean, I know I keep going on about the fact that she's 15, but at any age, that's horrific. For any person, any human being, that's horrific. But, yeah, I just think it's insane. I also think it's insane that these two guys have never been caught. Because what I was also thinking was, I know it's terrible to think, but if we all listen to true crime and we know what these stories have taught us in the past. I thought, if one of them raped her, there's surely DNA that can be taken. There's surely things in the house that they could find prints or they could find something, but I don't know why these guys were never ever found. It's a terrible thing to say, right? It is terrible, but again, if we all listen to true crime, we know the truth of things. I think had Sydney died that night, these two guys might have been found. You know, I think it's one of those things where you go, well, she survived it. You know, she came through it, horrific as it was. You know, she'll bounce back from it. Yeah, she'll always have, you know, a form of PTSD in her life, and yeah, you know, she'll always carry some anxiety, some fear, and you know, she'll carry a scar on her leg forever. But I just think had that ended in a much more tragic way, these two men might not still be free men who are, you know, capable of doing this again. But let's not focus on them, because they're a pair of bastards. Let's focus on Sydney, because she's the one who survived the situation. So, good on her. Alright, okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed that short stories episode. At the weekend, I'll have the main episode out. So again, if you're new to the podcast, the midweek episode tends to just be a shorter story, something, you know, much more in brief, and the weekend episodes tend to be longer. That's a general rule. It doesn't really always work out that way, because sometimes I make these rules and then I forget the rules. I forget what rules I have made. I forget what I've said. I say things and then I say them with such bloody confidence, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I said that, didn't I? Shit, yeah. Totally forgot I said that. But one thing I will say that I haven't forgotten is I asked last episode if you could send me your ghost, Halloween, creepy, spirit-based stories, and so far lots of you have. Lots and lots of comments on the Facebook group. Yeah, some really interesting stuff starting to come in. So I'm gonna put together an episode, and you know, you can send those to me judgment free. I will not judge you. If you believe that there is a ghost living in your cupboard, tell me about it, and I'll believe you, because my mind is open to these things. Okay, so please send me your creepy stories. They can be scary, they can be funny, they can be whatever. Okay, I mentioned it just there, but if you do want to get in touch, please join the ever growing and getting stronger Facebook group all the time. The group is growing, and it's such a lovely environment. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram if Facebook's not your thing. If none of those are your thing, you can email me all the time, extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com. Okay, I think that's really it from me. Okay, until the weekend. Thanks for listening. Okay, goodbye.
They Walk Among Us is an award-winning true crime podcast. From the sinister and surreal to the brutal and bizarre, join us to hear more on the UK's most notorious and obscure crimes. Featuring well-known cases like the life and crimes of the UK's most violent inmate Charles Bronson, to the sad tale of the Gibbons twins whose string of petty crimes would lead them to be trapped in Broadmoor for 11 years before their eventual release ended in tragedy. We also cover lesser-known cases like the woman who murdered her husband with an ornamental frog and kept him mummified in her shed for 18 years, or the teenager that used his elaborate online fantasy life to plot his own murder. Listen and subscribe to They Walk Among Us through Acast, Apple Podcasts, or your favourite podcast provider.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.